It was a warm afternoon when Manny Pacquiao decided to do something most people would never expect from a world champion and senator. He walked into a local bank branch carrying nothing more than a simple envelope. No bodyguards, no media, no flashy suit, just Manny in a plain shirt, jeans, and sneakers. To everyone around him, he looked like any ordinary man running errands. Inside the bank, the air buzzed with the usual mix of chatter, the clicking of keyboards, and the shuffle of papers. Customers waited in line, some tapping their feet impatiently, others scrolling on their phones. Manny took his place in the queue, smiling politely at the people around him, completely at ease. But as soon as the bank manager noticed him, suspicion flickered in his eyes. To the manager, Manny didn't look like a man holding a multi-million peso check. He saw only someone who didn't fit the image of a wealthy client. Instead of seeing humility, he saw weakness. Instead of respect, he chose arrogance. When Manny finally stepped forward, he greeted the manager with his usual politeness. He slid the check across the counter and softly said, "I'd like to deposit this, please." The manager frowned, picking up the paper. His tone was sharp, dripping with doubt. "Where did you get this? This doesn't look real. Do you even have an account here?" A hush spread through the nearest customers. They could sense the tension rising. Manny, however, stayed calm. His voice was steady, his posture relaxed. He wasn't here to argue, but the manager's eyes narrowed as if he was determined to find fault. To him, Manny wasn't a respected leader or legendary boxer. He was just another man to look down on. And in that moment, the stage was set for an encounter that would shock everyone in the bank. What happened next left the entire branch speechless. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been judged unfairly just because of how you looked? Type yes in the comments if this has ever happened to you. The manager held the check between his fingers as though it were contaminated. His lips curled into a smirk and his tone carried open mockery. "This check looks fake. People like you don't walk in here with this kind of money. Who are you trying to fool?" The words landed like a slap across the room. Customers shifted uncomfortably, exchanging uneasy glances. Some shook their heads while others leaned closer, sensing that something unusual was happening. Manny, however, didn't flinch. He had faced roaring crowds, brutal punches in the ring, and even political battles. Compared to all that, one arrogant bank manager was nothing. His calm eyes stayed fixed on the man in front of him. "I assure you, sir, this check is valid," Manny replied softly, his voice steady. "All I ask is that you verify it properly." But the manager wasn't interested in professionalism. His prejudice blinded him. He chuckled coldly, raising his voice loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. "Valid. Don't waste my time. Do you even understand how banking works? I've been doing this job for years. I can spot fraud from a mile away." A young teller nearby looked uneasy. She whispered to a colleague, "He didn't even scan the check. Why is he treating him like this?" But the colleague only shook his head, too afraid to interfere. The crowd thickened behind Manny. Some pulled out their phones, discreetly recording the scene. A mother whispered to her child, "That poor man. He's just trying to deposit his money." The child tugged her sleeve and asked innocently, "Why is the boss being so mean?" Manny stood still, hands folded in front of him. He wasn't angry, none yet, but his silence made the manager grow even bolder. "Listen here," the manager sneered, tapping the counter with the check. "People like you walk in thinking they can trick the system. But not in my bank. I protect this institution from fraudsters." The irony hung heavy in the air. The man thought he was protecting the bank, but in reality, he was humiliating its owner. Still, Manny chose respect. He leaned forward slightly and said, "Please, I ask again, just verify it. That's all." But instead of listening, the manager slammed the check on the counter, his voice sharp like a whip. "I don't need to verify garbage. Do you think money like this belongs in your hands?" The room went silent. A gasp escaped from one of the customers. Manny's wife, standing nearby, bit her lip nervously. She knew her husband's temper had been tested many times before, in politics, in boxing, in life. Yet he always tried to hold on to humility, and he was doing it again. "I came here with respect," Manny said quietly. "I would appreciate the same in return." But those words only seemed to ignite the manager's arrogance further. His face twisted in disdain. He raised the check high in his hand as if to show everyone in the bank what he thought of it. "You know what? This is worthless," he shouted. The crowd leaned forward, eyes wide. What was he going to do? The moment stretched thick with tension, and then in front of everyone, the manager tore into the check. The ripping sound echoed in the bank like thunder. Some customers gasped, others muttered angrily. A few even shouted, "That's not right." Pieces of the check fluttered to the floor like broken pride. Manny stared at the torn paper for a moment. His face remained composed, though a flicker of pain passed through his eyes. Not because of the money, when he had more than enough, but because of the sheer disrespect not just toward him, but toward every ordinary person who had ever been belittled by someone in power. His wife whispered urgently, "Let's just go, Manny, please." But he shook his head slowly. "No," he said softly. "Sometimes you have to stand where you are. Sometimes silence is also injustice." The words weren't loud, but they carried through the entire bank like a bell. People stopped whispering. They straightened, listening. The manager laughed dismissively. "Silence, justice? Don't talk nonsense. You're lucky I don't call security right now." But what the manager didn't realize was that the tables were already beginning to turn. The crowd wasn't with him. Their eyes were shifting, their loyalty slowly gravitating toward the quiet, dignified man he was mocking, and the storm had only just begun. If you believe no one deserves humiliation, not in a bank, not in public, not anywhere, hit the like button to spread this message of respect. The shredded pieces of Manny's check drifted to the floor like ashes, the sound of tearing paper still echoing in the stunned silence of the bank. Every customer, every teller, every staff member froze in disbelief. Some gasped, others muttered angrily. Phones were already up, cameras pointed, capturing every second of the outrageous scene. But the bank manager stood tall, his chest puffed with arrogance. He believed he had just exposed a fraudster, a man who dared walk into his branch with a fake check. His voice boomed across the lobby, dripping with condescension. "See? This is what happens when you try to fool the system. I don't care who you are or what story you make up. My bank doesn't deal with people like you." Manny remained motionless, his calm composure unchanged. His wife tugged at his sleeve, her face filled with worry. His children looked frightened, clinging to her side. "Please, Manny," she whispered urgently. "Let's not make this worse. Let's just go." But Manny shook his head gently, his eyes never leaving the manager. His voice was low, but it carried a quiet authority. "You had no right to destroy something that wasn't yours," he said. "All I asked was for respect and verification. That's what any customer deserves." The manager scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Respect? You earn respect? You don't walk in here dressed like that, acting like some big shot with a fake check and expect me to bow down. Not in my branch." The words hung heavy in the air, sharper than any blade. From the crowd, a man muttered, "He didn't even check it properly." Another customer added louder, "This isn't right. He should have at least verified it." Murmurs spread, growing into open disapproval. Still, the manager pressed on, trying to drown out the voices. His pride wouldn't let him back down. "You're wasting everyone's time," he barked. "Get out of here before I call security to drag you out." The room went completely silent. Everyone turned to Manny. What would he do? Would he finally snap? Would the legendary fighter unleash his temper? But Manny didn't. He stood taller, but his fists remained unclenched. His eyes stayed calm, his breathing steady. He knew the entire room, and soon the entire world through those phones was watching. "You can call whoever you want," Manny said firmly, "but you cannot." That was the moment. The arrogance in his words, the audacity of claiming ownership of something far beyond his authority, sparked a ripple through the crowd. A young woman near the back whispered, "Did he just say his bank? He's just a manager, not the owner." Another customer shook his head. "He has no idea who he's talking to." Manny closed his eyes briefly, gathering his patience. His wife gripped his arm again. "Manny, please," she urged. "We can fix this another way." But Manny gently pulled his arm free. He knew this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every person who had ever been humiliated. Every ordinary man or woman who had been judged unfairly because of how they looked. He turned slightly, addressing not just the manager but the entire room. "Every customer deserves fairness," Manny said, his voice steady but commanding. "Not humiliation, not prejudice, just fairness. What happened here should never happen to anyone. Not to me, not to you, not to anyone." The lobby buzzed with energy. Phones kept recording. Customers nodded, some even clapping louder now. The manager, however, was losing control. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Enough! If you don't leave this instant, I'll have the police here in 5 minutes. You'll regret ever walking through those doors." But the irony was clear. The more he threatened, the more foolish he appeared. The crowd wasn't on his side anymore. Their eyes were on Manny, calm, dignified, unshaken. If you were Manny in this situation, would you stay calm like him, or would you have already snapped at the manager? Comment calm or snap below. I want to hear your thoughts. The atmosphere in the bank had completely shifted. What started as a simple transaction had turned into a moral showdown. A showdown between arrogance and humility, prejudice and respect. And while the manager thought he was winning by humiliating a customer, he didn't realize he was losing something far greater: the trust of his staff, the support of his customers, and the respect of everyone watching. The storm was building. Whispers in the crowd grew louder. Recognition flickered in a few faces. Someone murmured, "Wait, isn't that Manny Pacquiao?" The tide was turning, and soon the truth would unravel. But for now, the bank stood in silence, waiting for the next move. If you believe that no one should ever be treated this way in public, hit share so more people can see this story of dignity versus arrogance. The bank lobby buzzed like a hive about to erupt. Phones were still recording. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and the arrogant bank manager stood with his arms crossed, convinced he had just humiliated a fraudster. But in the corner, an elderly man squinted at Manny. His hand trembled as he whispered to the woman beside him, "That face. I've seen him before. Isn't that Manny Pacquiao?" The woman frowned, looking closer. Then her eyes widened. "You're right. That's him. That's Manny Pacquiao, the world champion." The whisper spread like wildfire. Another customer gasped, clutching her phone. "Oh my God, that is Manny Pacquiao. I just watched his speech on YouTube last week. How could I not recognize him?" A teenager near the back blurted out, too loud for the manager to miss, "That's Pac-Man, the people's champ." The bank seemed to freeze. Tellers glanced at each other, shock dawning on their faces. Some employees even stepped closer, eyes wide as they realized who had been standing humbly at the counter all this time. But the one man who didn't notice, or refused to, was the bank manager. He waved his hand dismissively, sneering at the crowd. "Don't be ridiculous. Do you think Manny Pacquiao would be standing here in my branch dressed like this, waiting in line like the rest of you? Use your brains. He's just some guy trying to scam us." The arrogance in his tone drew groans from the customers. They knew the truth now, and his ignorance was only digging his hole deeper. Meanwhile, Manny stood quietly, almost embarrassed by the growing recognition. He hadn't come here to flaunt who he was. He had come as a simple man, as a father, as a customer. Fame was the last card he wanted to play. He raised his hand gently, motioning for the crowd to calm down. "Please," he said softly. "This isn't about who I am. It's about how anyone deserves to be treated." But his humility only made the crowd admire him more. A middle-aged man stepped forward, speaking loudly so everyone could hear. "Manager, you don't realize what you've done. This isn't just any man. That's Manny Pacquiao, senator, philanthropist, and the pride of our nation. And you tore up his check without even verifying it." The lobby erupted in murmurs of agreement. The manager's face twitched, but he forced a laugh. "You're all fools. Pacquiao? Here? Impossible. Don't believe everything you hear. He's probably some look-alike trying to get attention." But the tide had already shifted. One of the younger tellers timidly stepped forward. She was shaking, but she found her courage. "Sir, I think they're right. That's him. I've seen him on TV since I was a child. His face is unforgettable. That's Manny Pacquiao." Gasps filled the air. The crowd's energy was electric, buzzing with disbelief at the manager's arrogance and admiration for Manny's patience. Still, Manny refused to use his fame as a shield. He looked at the crowd and said, "Whether I'm Manny Pacquiao or not shouldn't matter. The point is, no one deserves disrespect when they walk into a bank. Every person, rich or poor, should be treated fairly." His words silenced the room. They rang with truth, echoing in the hearts of everyone present. Have you ever seen someone stay calm even while being insulted? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. The manager, however, was sweating. The murmurs, the recognition, the phones, and it was all slipping out of his control. Yet his pride wouldn't let him back down. He leaned over the counter, glaring at Manny. "Fine, let's say you are Pacquiao. What difference does it make? In my bank, everyone follows the rules. And I don't care if you're a senator or a boxer. If I think your check is fake, I'll treat it like trash." The crowd booed. A woman shouted, "That's not following the rules. That's abuse of power." Another added, "You didn't even scan the check. You tore it up like garbage." The atmosphere was charged. Customers weren't just bystanders anymore. They were witnesses to injustice. And they were angry. Meanwhile, Manny remained the calmest man in the room. He placed a hand on the counter, steady and firm. "I didn't come here to be treated as a champion," he said quietly. "I came here to be treated as a person." Those words were like lightning in the storm. The crowd erupted in applause, some even chanting his name softly. "Manny! Manny! Manny!" The manager's face turned crimson. His arrogance, once unshakable, now looked pitiful against the wave of truth crashing around him. And yet, the story wasn't over. The recognition was growing, but the final blow, the revelation of who truly controlled the bank, had yet to land. If you agree with Manny's words, type respect in the comments. Let's flood the chat with that one word: respect. The bank stood on the edge of chaos. The crowd had chosen their side. The only one left in denial was the manager himself. And when the truth finally arrived, it would shatter his arrogance beyond repair. The lobby was electric. Customers murmured, phones recorded, and Manny Pacquiao's name rippled through the crowd like a spark. Some chanted softly, others whispered in disbelief. Everyone knew now, except the one man who refused to accept it: the manager. He stood firm behind the counter, sweating but defiant, clinging to his arrogance like a shield. His voice cracked, but he tried to sound powerful. "Listen, I don't care what anyone says. Famous or not, in this branch I make the decisions. And I say this man doesn't belong here," gasps erupted. Even his own employees looked at him in disgust. But still he puffed his chest as though daring Manny to challenge him. For a long moment Manny remained quiet. His head was slightly bowed, his hand resting on the counter. The crowd leaned forward, waiting, wondering if he would finally reveal who he was, if he would unleash the authority of a senator or the power of a champion. Then Manny lifted his gaze. And when he spoke, his voice wasn't loud, but it carried like thunder. "You say I don't belong here," Manny began slowly. "But tell me, who decides who belongs? Is it the clothes a man wears? The color of his skin? The way he speaks? Or is it the dignity inside him? The respect he gives and the respect he deserves?" The room went dead silent. Every ear tuned in, every phone camera focused. Even the tellers stopped their work, frozen by the weight of his words. "You call yourself a protector of this bank," Manny continued, his voice steady but powerful. "But protecting a bank doesn't mean humiliating the people who trust it with their money. Protecting a bank means protecting the people, all the people, who walk through those doors. Not tearing their dignity apart like you tore that check." The crowd erupted in applause. Some clapped loudly, others cheered. That's right. The chant of "Manny, Manny, Manny" began to grow again. The manager's face twisted. "Don't lecture me," he snapped. "I have rules to follow. If people don't meet the standard, they don't deserve respect." Manny shook his head slowly. His tone grew sharper, stronger, cutting through the room. "Respect is not something you give only to those you think are worthy. Respect is a right. Every person, rich or poor, famous or unknown, deserves it. The moment you deny that, the moment you think your power allows you to humiliate others, you are no longer protecting this bank. You are destroying its honor." The crowd roared with agreement. Some people whistled, others clapped so hard the sound echoed off the walls. A young man recording on his phone whispered, "This is going viral tonight." Manny turned slightly, addressing not just the manager, but everyone in the lobby. His words now carried a rhythm, the cadence of a leader, a champion, a man who had fought battles far beyond the ring. "I have been poor. I have been hungry. I have walked barefoot in the streets with nothing but hope in my heart. If someone had judged me then, the way you judge me now, maybe I would never have made it here. Maybe I would never have been given a chance. And yet here I stand. Not because of arrogance, not because of prejudice, but because someone somewhere showed me respect." The room was buzzing with emotion. Some customers wiped their eyes. A teller clasped her hands in front of her, whispering, "He's right. He's right." Manny's voice grew firmer, commanding. "So I say this not just to you, manager, but to everyone here. Never look down on someone because of how they appear. Never destroy another person's dignity because you think they are less. You don't know who they are, what battles they have fought, or what greatness lies within them. If you truly want to protect this bank, or any place of service, protect the respect that every person deserves when they walk in. The applause was thunderous now. People stood, clapping, cheering, chanting his name louder and louder. The once quiet bank had transformed into an arena of truth. Do you agree with Manny's words? Type respect in the comments right now and let's see how many of us believe in this message. The manager's arrogance began to crumble. His lips trembled, his hands shook. He tried to shout over the noise, but his voice broke. Enough of this nonsense. But it was too late. The crowd wasn't with him anymore. They were with Manny. And for the first time, the manager realized he was no longer in control. Manny stepped back slightly, his calm composure returning. His voice softened, but his words were sharper than ever. You tore up my check, he said, but what you really tore was the trust of every person here. Remember this moment, because trust once destroyed is not easily repaired. The bank went silent again. The weight of his words settled heavily over everyone, and though the manager still clung to his pride, a nervous sweat dripped down his temple. The truth was closing in on him. Soon he would know exactly who he had humiliated, and the consequences would be far greater than he could imagine. If you think Manny handled this with dignity and strength, hit the like button and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. The storm was reaching its peak. The crowd had chosen their side. Manny had delivered his truth. The only thing left was the revelation that would flip the entire situation upside down. The bank lobby was alive with energy. Customers clapped, some cheered, others shook their heads in disbelief at the arrogance of the manager. Manny's words still echoed in the air, powerful and unforgettable. Respect is a right. Every person deserves it. But the manager was red-faced, refusing to give in. He slammed his palm on the counter, desperate to regain control. Enough of this circus, he barked. This is my branch and I decide what happens here. If you don't like it, you can all leave. The arrogance in his tone only fueled the crowd's anger. Customers booed. A woman shouted, "You don't own this place." Another added, "You've gone too far." The tension was unbearable. And then, just as the manager tried to shout over the noise, a voice cut through the chaos. "Stop this immediately." Everyone turned. A senior officer of the bank, dressed in a crisp suit, strode quickly into the lobby. His face was pale, his eyes wide with shock as he took in the scene. The torn check on the floor, the angry crowd, Manny standing tall in calm dignity, and the manager trembling with frustration. "What on earth is going on here?" the officer demanded. The manager seized his chance, pointing at Manny like an accuser. "Sir, I caught this man trying to deposit a fake check. I stopped him, I protected the bank. He's causing a scene and these fools are supporting him." The officer froze. His eyes locked on Manny. His jaw dropped. "Dear God," the officer whispered. That's Senator Manny Pacquiao." The lobby erupted. Gasps, cheers, shouts. The noise was deafening. Some customers screamed with excitement. Others clapped louder, phones zoomed in on Manny's face. The truth was undeniable. The manager blinked rapidly, shaking his head. What? No, that can't be. This man came in here dressed like a human being." A woman shouted angrily from the crowd. "Not that it matters. That's the Manny Pacquiao." The officer's face turned grave as he addressed the stunned manager. "Do you have any idea what you've done? This is Senator Pacquiao, a world champion, a philanthropist, and more importantly," he hesitated, the weight of his next words crashing over the lobby like a tidal wave. "He is one of the major shareholders of this very bank." The crowd erupted again, louder than ever. Some customers cheered, some laughed at the absurdity. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Phones captured every second. This moment was destined to go viral. The manager staggered back, his face drained of color. His lips parted, but no words came out. The arrogance that had fueled him all afternoon collapsed into sheer panic. You own," he stammered. "You own the bank?" Manny's eyes were calm but piercing. He didn't boast, didn't smirk, didn't gloat. He simply nodded. "Yes, but today I didn't come here as an owner. I came as a customer." "And you failed." Manny bent down, gathering the torn pieces of the check. He didn't look angry, just disappointed. "Paper can be repaired," he said softly. "But dignity once torn is harder to mend." He placed the pieces gently back into the envelope and turned to the officer. "See that this is handled properly. And make sure this never happens to another customer." "Yes, sir," the officer said quickly, bowing deeply. The manager stood frozen, humiliated before everyone. His pride had been burned to ashes, his arrogance exposed for the world to see. And Manny, he didn't gloat, didn't boast, didn't revel in victory. He simply walked toward the exit, his family beside him, his calm dignity shining brighter than any title, any trophy, any bank account. The crowd parted for him, clapping, cheering, some even chanting, "Respect! Respect, respect." If you believe Manny was right, that respect should be for everyone, not just the rich or famous. Type respect in the comments and share this story. Let's make this message go viral. The truth had been revealed. The tables had turned. And the man who thought he owned the bank had just learned who truly did. The doors of the bank closed behind Manny Pacquiao, but the story was only beginning. Inside, customers buzzed with excitement, phones still recording, voices overlapping as they recounted what they had just witnessed. Within minutes, clips began flooding social media. Bank manager humiliates Manny Pacquiao, doesn't know he owns the bank. The videos spread like wildfire. TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Everywhere you looked, the incident was there. Millions of views racked up within hours. Hashtags trended. Respect for all, Manny Pacquiao, bank scandal. One video captioned, "This is why you never judge by appearances," hit 5 million views in just one night. Another clip of Manny's powerful line, "Respect is a right. Every person deserves it," was shared thousands of times, with people calling it the quote of the year. But it wasn't just ordinary viewers reacting. Journalists covered it, politicians weighed in, even celebrities around the world shared the video. A famous actor tweeted, "Manny Pacquiao once again proves why he's more than a champion in the ring. True power is humility plus respect." Meanwhile, the bank manager's face was everywhere, replayed, memed, ridiculed. Comment sections overflowed. "How do you burn Manny Pacquiao's check? Imagine disrespecting the owner of your own company. This guy's career is over," and it was. Within days, the bank released an official statement. They apologized publicly to Manny Pacquiao, acknowledging his ownership stake and condemning the actions of the manager. They promised an internal investigation and confirmed the manager had been suspended pending dismissal. The manager himself tried to issue a tearful apology video. He claimed he didn't know and that he was just doing his job, but by then the damage was irreversible. Public trust in him was gone. While the manager sank in shame, Manny rose higher. News outlets praised his composure. "Pacquiao's dignity teaches the world a lesson in respect," one headline read. Another called him the people's champion, not just in boxing, but in life. What stood out most was how Manny chose to respond afterward. He didn't brag. He didn't demand revenge. Instead, he used the platform to spread a message. In interviews, he said, "I forgive the manager. But forgiveness doesn't erase the lesson. This isn't about me. It's about the way we treat people every day. Rich or poor, known or unknown, everyone deserves respect." That line went even more viral than the confrontation itself. Teachers used it in classrooms. Motivational speakers quoted it on stage. Churches referenced it in sermons. Respect had become the rallying cry of millions, all because one man stayed calm when others would have exploded. Back in the Philippines, the story touched hearts deeply. Manny's humble beginnings were well known. A boy who once sold bread in the streets, who knew what it felt like to be invisible, dismissed, disrespected. People saw this incident not as a humiliation, but as a reminder of his journey. Only someone who remembers where he came from could have handled it like that, one supporter wrote online. Another commented, "This is why Manny will always be our champion. Not because of the belts, but because of his heart." And the global impact? Immense. Videos of the confrontation were translated into multiple languages. In the US, civil rights groups cited Manny's words in campaigns against discrimination. In Africa, speakers used it as an example of dignity in the face of arrogance. In Asia, it sparked conversations about humility and equality. Even banks around the world quietly circulated memos reminding their staff about customer treatment. Nobody wanted to be the next viral humiliation. But through all the noise, Manny stayed the same, grounded, soft-spoken, and humble. He donated the amount from the burned check to a scholarship fund, saying, "Money can be replaced." But the lesson of respect is priceless. Crowds outside his training gym cheered louder than ever. Fans wrote respect on signs, on t-shirts, even on their skin and marker just to show support. It wasn't just about boxing anymore. Manny had reminded the world of something bigger: humanity. What do you think was the most powerful lesson from this story? Humility, respect, or forgiveness? Comment your answer below. I want to see which one stands out most to you. The disgraced manager faded into obscurity, remembered only as the man who tried to shame greatness and ended up shaming himself. But Manny's words lived on, etched into the memory of millions. At his next public event, a sea of people shouted in unison, "Respect, respect, respect." The chant rolled like thunder, proving the message had taken root far beyond the walls of that small bank. And so, what began as an ordinary visit to deposit a check became a story that touched the world. A story of arrogance versus humility, of prejudice versus dignity. A story that proved true champions fight battles not with fists but with character. If you believe no one should ever be judged by their appearance, type respect in the comments right now. Hit like to support Manny's message and share this story so it inspires more people around the world. The video ended, but the lesson remained, forever echoing. Respect is a right. Every person deserves it.